My name is Sarah Donovan, and I'm in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Today is October 16th, 2020, and I am interviewing Monica Schwafaty from Redondo Beach, California, for the oral history project titled COVID-19 Teacher Poets Writing to Bridge the Distance, which will be archived by the Oklahoma State University Oral History Research Program. So Monica, will you begin by introducing yourself to us?
Sure. I'm Monica Schwafaty, and I've been teaching for 25 years. I teach 8th grade English at the moment. I'm from Brazil, and I moved to the U.S. 31 years ago. And I'm a mother. I have a daughter who's 27.
Will you tell us about how you became an educator? Like, what was that journey for you?
Well, I kind of always knew I wanted to be a teacher, so it was never a question, and I never had to think about it. But when I left Brazil, I was teaching, and I came to the U.S. Because English is my second language. I thought I'm never going to be able to teach in the U.S. So I became a teacher assistant. But then I met this teacher who I think she saw potential in me, and she really encouraged me to have my transcripts translated and evaluated, which I did. And 1995, I had my own classroom.
Wow. Do you mind telling us a little bit about what brought you to the United States?
My boyfriend at the time. Yeah, actually, I came with a 1-month visa to talk him into going back, and I ended up staying.
Well, it's wonderful that your transcripts were able to allow you to then become a teacher. And so what was your first position when you had your own classroom?
I was teaching 2nd grade elementary school, and it was a bilingual classroom. So it was Spanish, and even though Spanish is my 3rd language, it was Spanish and English. Yeah.
Okay. And then since then, what kind of teaching positions have you had?
I taught 2nd grade for 2 years, and then I became a reading recovery teacher. I had special training, so I did that for a couple of years. And that was back in Washington State. When I moved to New Mexico, I was an instructional coach. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I went back to reading recovery, and then I went to middle school, 7th and 8th grade at the time.
And tell us a little bit about your teaching position now. Where are you? What do you teach? What grades?
I'm teaching 8th grade English. I've been teaching that since 2004. I am also on the leadership and instructional committee in my district. That's about it.
Okay. So we're here, thank you so much for telling us your journey. We're here today to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on education and on educators, and specifically the educators who are writing poetry during the spring of 2020, when COVID-19 first sort of started spreading across the United States. So going back to spring 2020, can you tell us a little bit about how you found out that COVID was in your area and that it would be impacting school as you knew it? Can you bring us into that moment when you first found out?
Yeah, well, the whole week there were rumors, right? Other states were shutting down, but California, we hadn't heard anything. But we were talking about it. When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And then it was March 13th. It was a Friday. And there is a group of teachers who I have lunch with I used to have lunch with every day. There's 5 of us. We always sat down and talked. And while we were having lunch, the principal called us in my room and told us that we were not coming back Monday, that we were shutting down, but not to tell the students, but also to make sure they had work for the next 2 weeks because we are getting close to spring break. So honestly, we go, oh, yes, we are shutting down. We are kind of happy, to be completely honest, yeah, no driving and all that stuff. Went back to the classrooms, and before I dismissed my period 5, I told them, here's work just in case we're not back. But I couldn't really tell them that we were not going to be back. And that didn't feel good. I just felt like I was betraying them a little bit, their trust. So March 13th, Friday, around 12:30, that's when we found out. That's when I found out, yeah.
Wow. So around the same time that the school buildings were closing, National Poetry Month began, and that's a month of celebrating poetry, writing poetry, reading poetry, and a group of teachers went onto a public website and did a poem a day writing challenge, and you participated in that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that?
I still don't remember why I got the email. I don't remember exactly, but I clicked on it and I go, oh, this looks interesting. And I think the first day I went on and I read the poems and I go, oh, this is so out of my league. I'm not even going to try that. So I didn't write anything. And I think maybe the second or third day I went back, and that just stayed with me. And then it just, I had this inner dialogue, what are you afraid of? Just write. You used to write poems when you were in high school and college. Why not now? And all that, self-doubt. And I went online and I read some of the poems and I read some of the comments that people were making, some of the feedback, and I saw that it was a very positive and supporting group. So I decided to take a chance and I go, I'm going to write one and let's see how it goes. And then I did, and it felt so good. So the next day when I went back, I saw that people had made some comments and they were supportive, and nice. And I just started looking forward to it. So I just started writing.
I wonder if you will share one of your poems that you wrote in the early days. I think you have one called It Embraces Me.
Yeah, that one is about my office, right, in my home. It embraces me. Here's a place that reminds me that it's time to get to work. Whether it's beautiful or gloomy outside, whether I feel tired or energized, a small desk with a comfy chair, my office. A computer sits on top, waiting for me to start. It's become one with the desk. It's a simple desk, nothing fancy, but it is much nicer than the one I have in my classroom. It welcomes me every day. I spend more time here now than anywhere else. It never gets sick of me, and maybe I should hate it, but I don't. It sits facing the ocean. What else could I ask for? This desk, I lost my place, I'm sorry.
Okay.
This desk, my office, has become my classroom. It welcomes my students, my kids. It's where we laugh and keep the bond alive. It's where I realize how much I miss them. It's where we go off on a tangent and engage in deep discussions. It's where they, my kids, amaze me. It is an unassuming desk, and it looks cold and distant. That's misleading, though. It's become my haven. It's where I'm becoming a writer again. After so many years of holding it in, the words storm out. This desk. It embraces my inner feelings, dreams, and desires, and it keeps them safe until I'm ready. Yeah.
As you're reading this now, what kind of strikes you? What memories and feelings are coming up for
it really embraced me. It became my refuge, my place to just be me. It's where I felt the human connection, not with my students only, with the group of teachers who were writing these poems, but it's, in a way, I was kind of connecting to myself again, to that girl back in high school and college that I had left behind. So I didn't expect to react like this at all, but it's it just became this special place. It's a safe place. It's my place. My place.
So did you find that, over the years, when you were teaching, that more and more like the writer within you was sort of like maybe didn't have time for it or didn't have a space for it in your life?
Just time, I think. And then it was time, teaching, getting my master's, raising a child, going through divorces and things like that. It was no time. And a lot of self-doubt too, like it was silly, you were in school and, how are you going to write poetry in English anyway? Your first one, all that stuff that you always second guessing yourself. And I'm talking with my hands because I'm Brazilian. So it was a little bit of everything together.
Mhm. And so, at this time, the schools are closed and the poetry is going on and there's COVID is sort of happening around the world. Each state and school sort of reacted in different ways. How did California respond to what was happening?
I think we were a little bit late as far as shutting down everything and going into quarantine, right? But I think once we did, it was done really well. I think people came together, businesses, government, school districts, the whole community came together. Um, People followed the rules. Most people were really concerned, and everybody did the best they could. I think California was one of the few states that didn't struggle with having masks and PPE available in hospitals and placed and to people. The one thing we struggled with, I think the whole country did, was finding, food supplies and things like that because everybody was buying so much because we didn't know what was going to happen and where things were heading.
What sort of policies did your school start to implement after a few weeks in that affected you as an educator?
Well, so we had 2 weeks where it was distance learning, asynchronous, and then we had spring break. After spring break, we had 2 days of professional development where we learned how to use Google Meet, Zoom, and Google Classroom, all that stuff. And we were given our schedule. We were going to be teaching 4 days out of the 5. And one day was for planning and teaming and just learning new things, which was really nice. We had a whole day just to prepare our lessons and learn things that we had to learn. And we were not seeing every class every day. So we saw Mondays and Wednesdays, we saw our even periods, so periods 2, 4, and 6. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, we saw the odd periods. And Fridays is when we had the day to do whatever we needed to do to get ready for Monday.
And during this time, once you were navigating this new schedule, what sort of maybe education issues or issues were revealed with your students as a result of this? Did you start noticing some things with your students or discrepancies with access to this kind of learning?
A lot. I teach in a Title I school. So that means at least half of my students don't even have money to pay for their lunches, right? So my school continued feeding the students. Many of my students did not have a computer or even internet connection and or access to books. So that was visible, and some of them, even though they had that stuff, they were left home alone with their siblings. I had a few students who they are 13. They were taking care of younger siblings, not only making sure they had breakfast, lunch, but also that they were attending their classes online and getting their work done. And then I had other students who had their own bedrooms, I had everything they needed. So that was very obvious, the inequality. It became very, very clear, more so than in the classroom. I noticed that I had no idea what some of my students went through or were going through and what their home environment was. So a lot of them would not even turn on their cameras because they had to share the bedroom with so many people. So it became very, very apparent, the haves and the not haves, the have nots. Yeah.
So after this, time was passing and the students were adjusting to the new schedule and you were adjusting to the new schedule, how did you make time to do writing during this?
Well, as soon as we started, I had my students keep a journal, and I wanted them to write about what they were feeling, anything they wanted to, and I told them I would not read it unless they wanted me to. And I was surprised, but they all wanted me to read what they were writing daily, and it was an eye-opening. It was also, I had good feedback to go back to my principal whenever we talked about how the kids were doing, if anyone needed counseling. Also, the amount of work that they were getting. Some teachers were really worried about covering everything that they needed to cover, and having those journals made it very clear that the students were very depressed and overwhelmed. Also, as far as academic writing, I still managed to do it. Everything went a lot slower than being in the classroom. So a lesson that would take a week would now take 2 or 3 weeks. But on the other hand, being on Google Classroom, I could give them feedback right there as they were writing. I could just get on their document and see what they were doing. So I still was able to feed it in and read books together, but nothing like being in the real classroom. It doesn't compare at all. And teaching is so much about that relationship that you build with your students, that person to person. And in a way, I missed that. In another way, because of their journals, in the end, I think we got closer, even closer than if we had been in the classroom, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And it also reminds me of something that you said a little bit earlier about being in the poetry community. And then that was like a place for you to go and feel supported instead of isolated. Is that fair to say that that's what you, yeah. And so when were you doing your writing for the poetry?
I either did it very early in the morning or late at night before going to bed. I remember a couple of times I told myself, I don't have time to do this. I'm so tired. I'm going to bed. And I couldn't go to sleep until I did it. So, yeah, I just had to do it.
You have a poem called Ritual. I wonder if you would be willing to read that for us.
Sure. Hopefully I won't lose my place this time. Ritual. Coffee, both in bed, courtesy of my fiancé. Quarantine is not so bad. Reach for my phone, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the news, email, #verse love. Read it, dissect it. Self-doubt. Maybe I'll skip it today. Refocus, read. Grateful for the early writers, blown away by their talent, brain at work. More coffee, yoga time. What a treat. One may think I've forgotten, but that is not the case. My brain is at work. Yoga feels great. I feel more capable now, energized. I get ready, brain secretly at work. More coffee, time to work. I turn on my computer, grades, Google Classroom, Google Meet. Maybe today will go better. Teach break, teach break, teach break, teach break. Today is not better. Sick of virtual teaching. Parents, students, it's never ending. Brain still secretly at work. Last cup of coffee. I'm exasperated. Empty cup. My brain reminds me I need my refuge. I need my haven. I need my escape. I'm ready. Sipping hot tea. I start typing.
Thank you. As you revisit this poem, what do you notice, or what kind of stands out to you?
I start typing. That line is a release. Like I let everything out. I let go. Um, I'm just ready to end the day and let everything out and renew myself. Yeah.
Did you find that you had more time for some of this? Being at home.
My yoga. I was something that was a big plus. Is that I love yoga. I'm not good at making time to work out. But yoga is the only thing that I really like doing. I don't like walking or anything like that. So being able to get up and not having to get ready to go to school to drive, it gave me time to get back to my yoga. Yeah. So that it was good. That was good.
Did you notice any other sort of benefits to the distance learning, or that maybe surprised you?
Being home felt good in the beginning. It really felt good. Other than that, not really. Not really, because I found out that my work day became a lot longer because I allowed it to get longer, you know. So no.
In what way? Like, what sort of things made it stretch?
When I was on campus, I'd leave work and I was done for the day. Not being on campus, I still was checking my email before going to bed. I was still replying to parents and students. I would stay at my computer working and planning lessons and grading papers until dinner time. So I just worked more hours. I really did. Yeah, a lot more hours.
You mentioned parents just now, and also parents in one of the poems. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your relationship with your parents, or some of the things that you were noticing with parents during this time?
Most of the parents were really supportive and encouraging, and if I contacted them about their child not showing up or not doing work, they were very supportive and encouraging. But a few parents that I contacted, they did nothing, and their child was not showing up to class, not doing anything, and there was no accountability. And as much as we tried helping and reaching out, even like doing home visits, they would shut the curtains and not open the doors or talk to us. So that was the frustrating part, was contacting these parents, and then somehow their child not doing their work became the teacher's fault. They said they did it, but it's not on Google Classroom. Well, then something happened. What did you do with it? Things like that, and it's like great. They make up excuses, and a lot of the parents still don't realize that they are teenagers and they are able to hide the truth sometimes now, and they believe their child over teachers. I was that student, so I know exactly how it goes. So that was the part that was frustrating.
Have you noticed any students seeming to thrive more in the online experience?
Absolutely. I saw a lot of them. And I have to say, a lot of my special ed students, the special education students, I don't know if they felt better just not being in the whole classroom setting. Um, and many of them who were quiet in the classroom became more outspoken. And a lot of them, because I don't know much about technology and they do, they loved teaching the teacher. So I gave them as many opportunities as I could for them to show me how to do things, and it was really good.
Can
And
you
then
give
a
me,
lot of,
can you give me an example of something that you learned about technology from your students?
well, I was trained on using Google Meet, right? But Google Meet at the time wasn't that good, but I didn't know how to use Zoom, and they helped me with that. The game Kahoot, I never played it. And they go, it's easy, Miss Schwafaty. And so they would teach me using Jamboard, which is like a whiteboard, right? I had no idea. So they helped me with that, just things like that.
Wonderful.
Yes, it was.
So some states really, continued with distance learning through the end of the school year. In many states, the school building stayed closed. What was the end of the school like for your school?
We remained closed. And since I teach eighth grade, it was bittersweet because it was actually sad because they have their promotion ceremony, which they couldn't have. Um, it never felt like we said the proper goodbye. Um, the students, they found the virtual classes to be their refuge, their place. Most of them, that's where they could be and feel supported. And that was ending for them. And a lot of them were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do during this summer? Um, so it was sad. It was really sad not seeing them again, not being able to say a proper goodbye. We did like promotion ceremony virtually, but it's not the same. And eighth grade, end of eighth grade is always bittersweet, but this time was really sad overall.
If you could go back and do anything differently, is there something that you would do differently during that school year?
Definitely, I would not have followed the rule of not telling my students that we were not coming back. I would have told them. I would just have been honest with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would have felt better, and I would feel better because we had to give them work for 2 weeks before they left, but we couldn't tell them what was happening. Once they realized, oh, we're not coming back, and that's why we got the work. As soon as we were online again, they said, you knew and you never told us. And so they felt betrayed too. And I felt like I betrayed them. So I would go back and I would just tell them.
Mm.
Yeah, I would.
So, during this time you were still writing some poetry and I wonder if you can share, a poem or two that maybe was surprising to you or particularly meaningful to you during that time,
Okay.
or maybe even challenging.
This one was a hard one for me to write.
Can you tell us a little bit about that before you read it?
So this one was, I can't remember what the prompt was, but it was one that made me really think about how I was dealing with everything aside from teaching, but teaching is also so much a part of me that I couldn't separate the two things. It's it was a lot of looking at myself and just trying to figure everything out the best I could. it was hard. It was a poem that took me back to some dark sides, some dark parts of me, and that were coming, resurfacing again. And it was hard for me to deal with writing that. And it turned out to be a short poem, but I don't know I don't know how I'm going to react as I'm reading it. It's called Me.
Okay, it's up to you if you.
I think I can do it. It haunts me, penetrating my soul, leaving me in anguish, making me feel hollow, longing, always there. The first thing in my mind when I wake up, the last thing in my mind before I fall asleep. The one thing that wakes me up in the middle of the night, wanting to scream, to run away. I cannot escape it. It's around me, it's within me, it consumes me. It is me.
Thank you for reading that. You mentioned self-doubt a couple times, and I think a lot of teachers, feel that. A lot of women feel that, and a majority of the writers in the poetry group are also women during this time. And poetry does sort of stir that sort of self-reflection when we have time to sit and write there. As you reread this, what stands out to you? How do you feel revisiting it?
I'm surprised that I'm still so emotional about them. I'm surprised that I think it's even more emotional now than before when I wrote it. And it's like, did I really write this? There's a little bit of that too. I wrote that, but just how emotional I still feel just reading them again. And I shared some of them with some friends from work too, and it was a special bonding time during that, when I shared with them too. But yeah, it's how much I still feel connected to those words and how much those words still stir these emotions in me.
Is there a line in particular?
It's within me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's there. It's here. It's coming from here and not going anywhere. So I have to acknowledge it maybe and give it space within me to let it live there, but not consume me.
Hmm. You mentioned sharing this with some friends or colleagues. How did that come about?
Well, one of the poems I wrote about our lunch group and having lunch with them. And we call each other sisters, right? Which was funny because with the group that I was writing with, they thought I was talking about my real sisters. And I was actually talking about these other 4 teachers that we ate lunch together every day. And now we have virtual happy hours. We still kept in touch, and so I shared that with them, and I shared that one with them. So they wanted me to share more. So a few of them, and then a couple of them actually wrote their own poems and shared. And then we started our book clubs, and we were talking about this poetry and books. It was very special.
It's beautiful to hear that. I think that this is part of the reason that we're doing the oral history is to kind of uncover the life of a teacher and educator and writer and how that all fits together. But in the margins, these are stories that are not revealed in the media or the news or reports and things like that. And had we not read that poem, maybe we wouldn't have heard the story about your other teachers who are like sisters to you, which I think is very powerful to think about where teachers find that support to endure the teaching during a pandemic, but also trying to stay healthy and stay true to our life as well.
Right. And you can only do that with teachers. only a teacher really understands another teacher. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Right. I think that's also what makes the poetry group even more powerful, is that they all are, that's something that we have in common, even though we're across the country and even in some other countries, right?
Yeah. It felt like a sisterhood. It really did. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if we can turn to sort of what's next. Or maybe now. Let's start with now. Like, what's the current state of education? What's happening with COVID-19 in your city? Like, does it feel still restricted, or are some of the restrictions lifting?
Some of the restrictions have been lifted. And honestly, because I'm by the beach, right, hardly anybody's wearing a mask anymore. And it's such a political issue as well, right? Restaurants here found a way around not being able to serve food inside. They took over the parking lots on the street, and it looks really nice. So now we are hoping that they actually close that street so that becomes permanently, just for pedestrians. So it's slowly, some schools, some districts are going back, but most of them are not yet. My school in particularly, we have a cohort of kids who are back on campus. Those are the students who were not attending online school. So we reached out to parents, and out of maybe 30, only 12 parents agreed to allow those kids to be back on campus. They are still in isolation, social distancing, wearing masks, and all of that. So I think slowly we're going back. Um, as far as education, back in March and April, it felt really good being a teacher because parents, the community saw us in a way that I think they hadn't seen us in a long time. They realized how much work we were doing. They At one point they were like, "Oh, you are heroes. I don't know how you do what you're doing," and it felt really good to be acknowledged. And then July came around, and there was a huge shift, and because people had to go back to work, it became okay for us to go back to work and risk our own health and the health of our families. So, and to me, that was like, whoa, what happened? 2 months ago, you were telling us how much you admired what we did and how much you respected us, and now you don't care about us anymore because you need to go back to work. And even the parents who were not going back to work, and I had friends of mine that they just said, "I can't handle my kids at home anymore. You need to go back to work," and that was sad. So, in the districts, I hear a lot. There could have been more support for the teachers. I think there still could be more. Because my family, I have my daughter and my fiance who work in IT, and they work for very good companies. I see the way they are treated working from home, and I see the way that I'm treated in my district, and it's really sad. It's really sad the way we are taken for granted and not supported. I mean, everything that I have here, I had to buy myself, my monitor, my camera, my keyboard, while they're getting it all sent home to them, with everything and anything they need. So that kind of stuff is kind of sad, and I understand a lot of people taking, early retirements or leaving the profession altogether. And honestly, I've been considering that, but I've been teaching for so long that I don't think I will. But I can see where young teachers are giving it a second thought and thinking maybe this is the time to change careers, unfortunately. Sorry, I didn't need to be negative, but it's how I feel.
I was going to ask you like what you need or what that support would look like, and the equipment that you mentioned was really specific. Is there anything else that you would ask for that would offer you the kind of support that you need?
Well, earlier I said when this started, right, we had one day that we weren't teaching live, that we could get ready and prepare. We don't have that anymore. We are expected to be live from 9 to 3, except for lunch, and every day. And the expectations are very high, but the time that we need to meet those is not given to us.
Mm.
So, and I know teachers, we always work past our office hours. No teacher I know is done at 3 o'clock. We have always worked nights or weekends grading papers, but it's more so now than ever. Yeah.
What do you think that the, teachers or maybe just our profession has to figure out in order to sustain this or move forward?
I don't think this is sustainable, really. I really don't. Um, and I think the one thing we need to do is find a way to change the perception of the teaching profession. I feel like we are one of the few professions, if not the only one, that people feel like they can tell us how to do our jobs. People who do not even have even the same level of education we do. I mean, we are professionals and sometimes we are not seen as such. So, but I think a lot of it is public perception, and it's a lot of teachers. We are in this because we care and we love these children. No question about that. But at what point is that going to be the factor that allows people to take advantage of us? Because every time we protest, we say something, oh, but the kids. And yes, but the kids. But my comeback now is, but the teachers. We take care of our children. Yes, we do. Who takes care of us? Who's worried about our well-being? Because I don't see that.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. So we have been talking almost an hour now. I wonder if we could end with one of your poems.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I love teaching. I love being with my students. I don't like anything else outside of that. My joy is being with my students. The time I spend with them when I'm teaching, preparing my lessons for them is a time that I'm really happy. It's everything else that is like, Anyway, I'm going to end with one that I wrote about verse love. Um, why should you participate in the hashtag verse love celebration? One, because even though your self-doubt makes you hesitate, later you'll be glad you did it. Two, because you can, because you want to, because you love poetry, because you need it. Three, because as you share your writing, a loving and supportive group gently embraces you. Their comments help you gain the confidence you so desperately need. These fellow writers, poets, make you feel safe enough to take risks. You finally let go of your fears. Four, because it gives you a purpose. You look forward to it every day, and it helps make the mundane daily tasks a little less boring. You cannot go to bed without writing your poem. No matter how tired you are, it becomes a daily ritual. It allows you to stop and breathe. Five, because it helps you see the world anew. It connects you to your own and everybody else's humanity. It reconnects you to the writer you left behind decades ago. Six, because the poems become a source of comfort and normalcy in a time when absolutely nothing is normal. It becomes a much needed outlet, a haven you didn't even know you needed. Seven, because it gives you an opportunity to look back. You share memories, revisit events, and realize things about yourself you did not even know or had forgotten. You share some of the poems with your loved ones, and you bond even more. 8, because as you share the experiences that have defined who you are, you find your voice.
Thank you so much, Monica. It has been a joy speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you.